This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We are internet friends turned real-life friends who both experienced the tragic loss of our sons to sudden infant death syndrome in winter of 2021.
In the year after Aiden died, my husband and I both became unemployed. My parents divorced, and we had to move 5 times for various reasons.
And as for me, just a few weeks before my son Quinn died, my then husband had come out to me as a transgender woman, and we're subsequently divorcing.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot.
But as long as we're living, we will love our sons deeply and work to make sure that we live a life that makes them proud.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
This has been.
Hi, guys.
Hi, we did it. I'm so happy to see you, Rachel. It's wonderful to see you. When I originally asked you to be on the podcast, you were so wonderful and gracious, and said yes, and then it took us like 3 months to actually schedule it. So I appreciate your flexibility. I'll just remind you again with what we're looking to capture from these meetings is that after loss, friendships change in a lot of different ways. And I think also as the friend, your experience was completely different than my experience being on the inside. And I think that a lot of people who've experienced traumatic loss like this have people that used to be in their life every day disappear. People that were not really in their life every day are now there every day. Like everything is different after, but it's hard to put on word. It's hard to describe exactly what changed. You just know something changed, but you don't know what. Alina, is that right?
Yeah.
So we just want to share both perspectives, like from my perspective and from your perspective. Like what our relationship was like before the loss, what the days and like the immediate weeks after the loss was like from your perspective and from our friendship's point, and where we are now in our friendship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll kind of do like a timeline. So why don't we start by explaining to Alina like what our friendship was like before the loss.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about yourself too, like just a little bit. It doesn't have to go crazy, but I just want to know who you are.
Yeah.
I think our listeners would too.
So I am a mother of 4, and the ages are 5 and under, so they're pretty young. And I'm a teacher, but right now I'm just with the kids at home with the baby right now. But during Corona, I was with the 3 boys, and now I have a girl. So Judith and I were very close when she lived here. We actually knew each other from college, and then when she moved here, we became super close while she lived here. One of my closest buddies, and we did everything together, from random workout classes to just walks in Forest Park or parties, and lots of volunteer work together because Judith is a doer and I like doers.
Rachel used to say that I'm a bulldozer.
You are a bulldozer.
Yes,
oh my God, you are.
The way I describe Judith. She's a feminist bulldozer.
I refer to her as a force of nature, which I think has a slightly better connotation, but I think it has the same meaning.
I like to associate myself with people that are open to progress and change and are willing to sometimes go against the norms to try to create good for the society. And Judith is one of those people. So while she was living here, I feel like a lot of our life ended up being connected somehow to those types of topics, like just how are we going to improve the community and how are we going to make everyone's lives better.
And like one of the things that Rachel and I did is that we started like a women's group that met monthly, and every month a different woman would present on like a topic that was interesting to her. And I think I think so many of the women in St. Louis where I lived there, some of them were doing the work that they did when they graduated college. Some were not working at all. Some of them were like everyone kind of had diverged. It wasn't like everyone was doing exactly what they were interested in all day. Some of them were doing different things. And so it's just a way for people to learn something new and to see a different side from women that we saw every day. We saw a different side of them when they were talking and presenting and like really getting excited about the things that they were passionate about. So we learned about organic foods and about like positive psychology. And I spoke about voting, and Julia spoke about like weight bias, like people who are overweight and the biases that they see. Like we just learned, I think that we like learned a lot of things. I feel like I learned a lot. And that was actually one of the coolest things that I feel I've done, because I just feel like I got to know people. I made new friends. I just feel like I
And
was
it went
learning.
on for 2 years. It went on
For
until
2 years.
left
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. And I love, but still, it was like fun. And it was a fun way to get people together.
Yeah,
Right.
it was amazing. It was a way for everyone, for the women to get together, be inspired, and leave having learned something new.
Yeah.
And it did continue through Corona, which was really special.
Yeah. We learned, I feel like we learned a lot about each other as people too.
Loved
So that, like, that's like, and also something to say is that Rachel had kids when I lived in St. Louis, but I didn't have kids. And so I definitely felt like for a long time, like Rachel was the closest mom friend that I had. She like just seemed to like know a lot of mom things. Like she just like knew things. Like I'll never
Sometimes
forget
I
one
knew
time.
too much.
One time, I'll never forget one time.
You probably
She
didn't
was
want
like,
to hear some of these
she like
mom
hired
things.
like a babysitter, and the babysitter was doing a diaper change, and she was like, the babysitter didn't like said something like, the poop is yellow. What happened to this baby? The poop is yellow. And Rachel was like all babies' poops are yellow in the beginning. Like, how do you not know that? And I remember just thinking, like, I didn't know that. Who knows that? Like, who knows that? I did not know that at all. But like Rachel, like I think that Rachel's like one of her greatest strengths is that she's like the most incredible mom. She also was a mom to a lot of kids, and she like thoroughly enjoyed it and did it well. So when I told her that I was pregnant, like you were the most excited for me. Like you were like, I remember you cried. You were so happy. You were like crying. It felt like this is something that you felt was your true calling, and like you were excited for me to join you in like this new stage and phase of our lives. So yeah, so that's what our friendship was like. Alina, did I capture it? Did we capture it?
Yeah.
So then, okay, Rachel, so let's talk about, then I had Aiden, and I had already moved away at that point. So what do you feel our relationship looked like, even though I had moved away, but when I had Aiden? Like, do you remember anything about that time?
Yeah. I still felt very close to you. I felt like you were going to be one of those friends that even though you were physically not in the same area, we were still going to remain very close. And I still did your meal train when Aiden was born. And I just still felt very close to you. Like I was still sharing things that were happening in town with you, even though you weren't physically here. And I was so excited, obviously, when Aiden was born.
And I remember you asked me about breastfeeding, and I was like, it's not really going well. And Rachel's like a queen breastfeeder. She knows like all the things. She's like you, Alina. Like
I knew that because of the yellow poops.
Yeah. Alina like knows all the breastfeeding tricks that you know. And but when I told her, I was like, it is not working. Like, I do not want to do this anymore. You were like really cool about it. You're like, okay, like it's just
That is best. That is
but you did offer to help, and I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to do this anymore.
You're like, it's not for me.
It's not for me. You were so nice about it. You was like, everyone has to do what's right for them. Everyone has to do what's right for them. Okay, so let's go to the like when Aiden did die. So how did you find out? Because I did not call and tell you. I didn't text you either. So how did you find out about it?
I'm gonna try my best to hold back my tears, even though I feel them coming already. I remember exactly where I was. I was nursing my 2-year-old at the time. He was probably a year or so. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how old he was at the time, but I was nursing him to sleep, and a mutual friend of ours had contacted me, and she asked if I had spoken to you. And I think maybe another person texted me too, asking if I had spoken to you, and I just felt like, oh my goodness, what happened? I actually thought initially that something may have happened to you. And so then I got a call, and I picked up, and I was just putting my baby to bed for the night, and I got the news, and I left the other room, and I was just in shock. And I couldn't even process, I couldn't even understand. It just didn't make sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And my husband is in the process of putting our other two kids to bed at the time. So it was, I was just, in shock.
Mm-hmm. And so what'd you do next?
I think I just tried to keep calling you. I probably just flooded your phone with, I don't know how many times I called, but
I know I didn't answer.
Yeah. No, you did not answer, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I was probably thinking I need to be there for you, so I just called, you
Yeah.
know?
I know I can imagine there's also some sense of like, oh, it must be a mistake. Like, let me just call Judith and clear this up because this can't be real, right? Like, this can't
Yeah.
be true.
Like what's going on? You know? Why are people calling me, telling me this information? This can't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you weren't picking up your phone, I called Julia, and
And
she
listeners, we also have
We
an
already know
interview
Julia.
with Julia. Yeah, I think hers will probably come out first. I'm not quite sure, but either you have already heard from her or you will hear from her.
So I called her, and she confirmed the news. And I think we just remained on the phone, not talking and in shock, just confused and trying to figure out what we were supposed to do as your close friends, like what the next step was and how we could support you. And then
And I know Julia had shared that she was going to come. She was going to fly out.
Yeah. And I was absolutely going to come too. And I was still nursing at the time, so it was lots of,
Logistics.
odd logistics were running through my head of how do I keep the baby here while I'm nursing, and how do I maintain my milk supply? Like just random things that were just taking up my brain space, and I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know, and I was just trying to figure out piece by piece how to just take a step forward and how to support you and how to be there for you. But at the same time, I don't blame you at all, but you weren't responding to me. You weren't talking to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this has never happened to me before. Like I've never had a very close friend who has lost someone like this, and I had no idea what to do.
And I can imagine it was hard because I know I wasn't answering your calls and your texts, but I was talking to a few of my friends. Like I was talking
Yeah.
to Miriam, I was talking to Huva, and I had spoken to Julia earlier in that day. So I wonder, like, what were you thinking, being someone who like desperately wanted to be in touch, but I wasn't responding?
It hurt a lot, and I didn't know. I didn't understand why. I didn't know if that meant that you felt less close to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't know if I should continue to almost pester you. Like I didn't know if you wanted to know that I cared and that I was there,
Yeah.
or if you just genuinely didn't want to hear from me. So I wasn't certain. So I think I would try to go one way, and then I'd try to go the other way. And then I bought the plane ticket to come out. And actually, Julia and I were going to fly. She was going to fly from Boston, and I was going to fly from St. Louis, but we were going to arrive at the airport at the same time and try to be there together for you. And I bought my ticket. I had everything packed. I figured out babysitting situations and everything for my kids and logistics. And then a few hours before the flight left, I got a text that I should not come out. So, but Julia got the news that she should come out. So that's looking back, that's completely fine. I'm so glad that someone was able to tell me not to come if you weren't ready for me to come yet. And at the time, I I was really hurt from that just because I was trying to be there for you and I didn't understand or I couldn't comprehend why my friendship was not the same as another person's friendship that you were letting in. Like I didn't understand why you weren't letting me in to your space, to your safe space. Because it was too much for you to be around me. And I didn't know if it was because you were worried that I'd say something wrong. And then it just turned into I didn't know. I felt like I was walking on eggshells. Like I was so scared to say the wrong thing for a long time.
I don't want to get there quite yet because I feel like we're missing like a crucial step, but I want to say something to what you just said, which is like I think that there's a really delicate balance that happens because I can tell you what I was thinking, but before I do that, I just want to say like how I think this is so common, right, Alina? Like,
Yeah.
so where I really hurt friends, not intentionally. Like I was doing just the best I could in that moment, and I'll explain what my thought process was. But as I've kind of had these conversations with friends after, and even just being a year and a half out, I'm able to see much more clearly other people's perspectives. I know that even with my best intentions, just trying to survive, I hurt so many people and I hurt them deeply. And I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know how to. I don't know. There's nothing to really apologize for because all I could do was survive. But I'm sorry that you were in so much pain, and I can imagine how much it hurt. And I know that it would have hurt me a lot, and I would have been offended, and I would have been like, I'm just trying to help you, and you're hurting me. And I can now see from more perspectives that that pain and that like Aiden's loss, I think, caused a lot of people a lot of pain in a lot of different ways. But I don't want to invalidate like the pain and the loss and the sadness that you went through just because I had, my own trauma. Like that doesn't mean that you weren't feeling it.
Yeah.
So I want to say like I'm really sorry that you were really hurt in this process. And I think that this example, what you're talking about with the plane, was I know the first of many things that happened. Like I know that afterwards, and we'll get there in a second. You did so much coordinating, like so much. You coordinated with all of my friends from across the country or even across the world to like, buy this beautiful necklace, and you raised money for me to get an Airbnb gift card. And I know that you contacted Airbnb and asked them to give me like a separate gift card. And like, I know that you did not stop working and did not stop thinking about Aiden for a long time, and I know we'll get there. But I think what I imagine is going to come up in these next few minutes of conversation is that you continuously were doing the absolute best that you could, and you were trying in the way that you knew best how. And I continuously shut you out, and I think I continuously hurt you inadvertently in the process. Yeah,
Grieving people are assholes.
Yeah.
Right? Like they kind of are.
Well,
they're
self-centered.
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 Yes.
And selfish.
Yes.
And yeah, they're selfish. And I think, like I said, I can be doing all the right things for me and still hurt people a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll say with Rachel, that decision to say, don't come. I also told like a few people not to come. I told quite a few people. There were some people who were already in the air, but I did tell some people not to come. And I think when I think about you, Rachel, all I think about is motherhood. I think it defines who you are as a person. I also knew that you wanted more kids and that you were in the process of trying or getting ready to try. And at that time, that was something that was really sensitive to me. I also know that you have 3 boys, some of whom share the same name as Aiden in his middle name and his first name too. And that was something that was really painful for me. And I felt like in that moment, I didn't think that you would say the wrong thing inadvertently in that moment. That's not what I was thinking. I just remember thinking like it was so painful to see you being an alive mother that it was a stab in the heart. Not only did you have 1 alive child, but you had 3. You didn't have 1 boy, you had 3, and I know you wanted more, and I knew that you were going to have as many as you wanted. And so it just felt like a slap in the face. Nothing that you did personally, just the circumstances of your life. Right. The circumstances of your life felt like a slap in the face to mine. And I think that's why ultimately I like really shut you out, is because it really hurt to see everything that you had and I had nothing. I know that everyone has their own problems. I'm not saying I don't think you have any problems. I know you have. Everyone has problems.
Right.
But it felt like it just felt so personal. The other person that I actually froze out at that time was my sister. I didn't talk to my sister. I didn't look at my sister. I mean, she was there, but I was not. Well, maybe one day we'll get to talk to her. And like, I did not look at her. And she was in my house for like 5 days, and I didn't even look at her once, because it felt the same way. It felt like she had so much, and she was pregnant, and she had 2 alive other children, and like, it just felt to me personal when I know it wasn't. So I think that's why in that moment I had said like I didn't know how to interact at that moment. But I do remember a few days later, it must have been Sunday. So Aiden died on Thursday, because I remember where I was. Aiden died on Thursday, and I called you on Sunday, it must have been. And I remember you answered the phone, and you were so emotional. And I could hear your kids in the background, I remember. And I remember it being like, I remember like wanting to vomit because I was driving. But I remember saying to you, Rachel, I know you're thinking about me. I know you care so much. I know. I just can't right now, but I know. And that's what I remember that conversation. That was like the first time we spoke. And I also know at this time that you were, like I said, doing things in the back end. Like there was like a whole WhatsApp group that had been created because I didn't want a meal train, but everyone wanted to make one. And so I know Rachel had sent food, and I know she had been coordinating with a bunch of other people to do, like I said, like a bunch of other things. So even though I continuously froze you out, you somehow continued to give. So do you want to talk about that? And first of all, do you remember that conversation that we had?
Yeah, I do remember that conversation. And I remember it was like a few days of, my husband, Zach, and I, obviously this was like everything we were thinking about the whole weekend. And then when I did get that call from you, I was like, oh my gosh, Zach, Judith is calling me. So I tried to escape the kids, even though they were all home. And I was running down to the basement, and I closed the door behind me. So you may have heard me like in the transaction. I didn't want to miss your call.
Yeah.
And I remember I picked up, and you said, Rachel, don't say anything. And I first just listened, and then I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I just was in this point that I just wanted to give you everything, and I didn't know what you wanted from me. I wasn't sure, which is very valid. I mean, you didn't probably know what exactly you wanted or needed. But and I was in the same situation on the opposite end. I wasn't sure what to do. I was just stuck. And I just figured I'll try the best that I can, and I'll try whatever things that surround you that I could do to help, whatever ways. And then
How
whenever
do you
you feel
remember
ready.
feeling after that conversation? Like, did you feel it was hurtful, or did you feel like you were glad I called, or did you feel like what did you feel hanging up after that phone call?
I think I was just glad that you were able to talk to me.
Yeah.
I think I was just trying to figure out what to do next.
And then like tell me how that whole like WhatsApp group, like what was going on over there, because I feel like you were the queen of it and I don't even know what was going on.
Everyone was just trying to figure out how to help, and whether it was to mention to learn in Aiden's memory, or to raise money for SIDS awareness, or to send food. Everyone was just trying to figure out the best way, and everyone was being very supportive in the group itself. I mean, because everyone that was in that group was very close to you too.
Yeah. But it was all from different like people, like different stages and ages, and
Completely different.
like I don't think you guys knew each other.
No, we didn't. But actually, I ended up befriending some of your friends, like your friend Miriam.
Yeah.
She and I ended up talking a lot afterwards. Just because we would just try to bounce off each other with ideas of how to help or whatever it was.
Another
But it
question I
was very
had.
helpful. It was very helpful to have the WhatsApp group, because there was just almost some sort of way of getting answers.
Well, and also
And I
it's
think there was
almost
also
like
direction.
it's also
Yeah.
like almost like a support group for everyone who, because you
Right.
were also grieving a loss, right? You're
Mhm.
grieving the loss of this baby who most of you never got to meet, and grieving the loss of Judith, who's kind of fallen off the face of the earth. And I know something that my friends and my family were feeling at the time right after Quinn died is like, is Alina ever going to come back? And I think, like, in a way, it probably felt nice to have this group of people who were kind of all feeling the same thing, which is like, we miss Judith. And also, how do we miss this baby so much? Because we never even met him, right? And that's so sad too.
And
Mhm.
also, I mean, one thing I'll say is that even though you guys never met him, you went to his bris. Like
Mhm.
they showed up. Like
Yeah.
you went to his bris, and I know you went to his funeral. I was gonna say also, I mean, you were one of the people who was closest to me in St. Louis, and I can imagine there was, I was gone, but I certainly had a lot of friends there. I mean, did you feel people were looking to you for information and you didn't have?
Completely. Completely. I was getting phone calls, texts, everyone, and different ages too. It wasn't just people our ages, it was people across the board. And people were asking me how they could help. So a lot of people ended up contributing to the SIDS organization, um, and to the food, or however they could help. They wanted to know also whether or not they should be contacting you. But I didn't necessarily know the answers either. I didn't know if you wanted people to contact
Yeah.
you. Some days yes, some days no. I was getting a lot of feedback also from Julia, because she was almost like the person connecting you and
Yeah.
me. Julia was in between, because you were talking with her and you weren't talking with me. So if you let her know that you needed something, then she was able to convey that to me so that I could try to.
And was that helpful or was that hurtful in
That
its own
was
way?
very helpful, because I was getting almost nothing. Like
Yeah.
I just had no idea, and people were asking me, "How are you?" I mean, obviously you're not doing well, but what can we do? Is there anything that Judith wants? And I had no idea what to tell people, because I just I was not communicating with you,
Yeah.
and
What
I
I Go ahead.
and I kept trying
Yeah.
to call, and I'd leave you messages on your phone, and I would text, and I remember many times you would say either you were in the middle of dinner, or it was too late, or it was too early, or it just wasn't a good time. And then
Yeah, I actually remember that a lot because you called me a lot, like in the months after, not just that week. You continuously called and I continuously was not available. And I don't know where I was, but something that did come up, and I'm glad that you brought this up, is that when I would call you or I would answer, I think that I remember distinctly we had this conversation. Like I would answer and like you would tell me about, I don't even know what. Like we wouldn't talk about the kids. You would tell me about what's going on with like school.
Mhm.
And I remember one time you said to me like, my goal is to be a bright spot in your day. Do you remember this conversation you had? You're like, I
Mhm.
want you to come on the phone
Mhm.
with me and I want you to feel like joy and like happiness. And I don't know if I said that. What did I respond at that time? I don't remember, but I know eventually I said to you like, that is not helpful.
Oh.
Because I don't know if I said that to you, but I was like, I nothing can make me feel joy right now. Nothing
Uh-huh.
can make me feel lighter. Nothing can make this any better. Nothing. I just need someone to sit and cry with me. I
Mhm.
don't want anyone to try and make me feel better. I just want
Mhm.
someone to like feel the shit that I feel
Mhm.
with me for 10 minutes. And again, I think that this happens a lot. You weren't the only one who like when I would call, it felt like we would talk about anything but the loss because they were scared to say the wrong thing.
Mhm.
I
And
actually
I
did
think
want to say, like, you were saying that Judith, you were in contact with Julia, but actually in our interview with Julia, she was feeling like you guys were not in contact at all.
well, because
Judith and Julia.
after Julia went home, I didn't talk to her either.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you know that?
I know that it was also tough for her to get a hold of you sometimes, but I definitely sense that it was easier for you to talk to her than to me. And it I understand the logic. I understand the
Yeah.
logic, but at the time it was really hard for me to
Mhm. Yeah.
to swallow that.
I didn't talk to yeah, I had a hard time with Julia also. And another thing is we had this WhatsApp group of me, you, and Julia. And I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes you would post in there, or Julia would post in there, and I don't think I ever responded because it felt like, again, to me, where I was sitting, it felt like everyone wanted to talk about normal life, and I wasn't in normal life. I
Mhm.
wasn't cooking dinner. I wasn't going out. I didn't do bike rides. I didn't go to the beach. Like my life was so sufferable and just I don't know if that's the word. It was just so horrific and it was so not normal that it just felt like I couldn't relate. I couldn't
Mhm.
relate to cooking dinner. I couldn't relate to being on a board. I couldn't relate to sending my kids to school. I couldn't relate to going to synagogue. I couldn't relate to anything. It just felt like your whole life was a whole world that I couldn't participate in anymore.
Mhm.
And
And
when I heard about it, I just felt even more alone because I wasn't in it.
mhm. Mm. And I obviously you know that my whole life is like surrounding these kids, and I felt like I couldn't talk to you about that stuff. I couldn't tell you about anything happening unless you were asking me about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't, because I didn't want to hurt you also.
Yeah.
So, and I kept not knowing if you wanted to talk about light things or heavy things or and so there's that weekend that you went to the retreat. Your husband emailed me and said, "Can you send a letter for Judith? It'll be a surprise for her at the retreat." And of course, I was happy to write a letter for you, and so I wrote a whole letter, and then I actually sent it to Julia, almost to proofread and to see if based on her conversations with you, if she sensed that it would be appropriate for you or if you would
Mhm.
respond well to it. And she and I together decided that I needed to change it entirely because it was too upbeat. Because my thought process behind it was to try to bring you some joy or even some laughter or some, you and I laugh a lot when we're together.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I'll bring, a comedic side to it, but it ended up we just decided that it was best if I completely changed it and take out anything happy from it because that's what you were feeling at the time. You just needed someone to be with you where you were, like to meet you where you were feeling.
Yeah.
So I had already sent it and emailed it to the woman who organizes the um, the getaway, the resort getaway. I'm not sure what it was called. The weekend getaway,
The retreat.
the retreat. And then I sent her another edited email and I said, please don't show Judith the first.
I'll add, I think we should add another thing, which is that you were pregnant at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know because yeah. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, you were pregnant.
Yeah. So I knew that I was going to be pregnant very soon at the time. And I asked you, this was months after Aiden had passed already, but I asked you, when I do get pregnant, do you want me to tell you or would you rather not? And you said, don't tell me until the baby's born. And once the baby's born, you can tell me if you need to. But even that, I think, was kind of pushing it.
And how did that feel for you? Because this is a baby you really wanted.
Yeah.
And it was a girl, so you were excited about it.
Yeah. I was, from my selfish perspective, I was so hurt by that because I felt like you were one of my closest friends. And for something so big to be happening in my life and for you to not care about it or not want to hear about it really hurt. But I also understood that the perspective that you're coming from. So it's not that I was angry at you. It was the situation that I was upset about, that I have something so exciting to share that my friend doesn't want to hear it, that the situation is causing my friend to not want to hear it.
I think that's so relatable. I think that so many people, right, Alina? I think so many people are in the exact same situations. Whether it be, I lost my son, but I can imagine people who are going through infertility. It's so painful. Pregnant people are so painful. It hurts so much that it's horrible. It's not. I had the same conversation with Julia also. Julia, I did know she was pregnant, but it wasn't good either. I wasn't supportive to Julia either. I was not around at all. We didn't speak about her pregnancy one time. Not one time. She told me and then we never really spoke about it again. And it was her first. So I think this is just another example of me being even with the best of intentions, doing everything I could have, I really hurt people again. This is a common theme here. I really hurt people again. I actually found out that you were pregnant because I was with Julia and her husband. I went there for a night, and her husband just mentioned it very casually, and the entire mood changed. She's like, "Oh yeah, Rachel's having her fourth. She's gonna be busy." And I was like, "What?" And then Julia was and she kicked Ari under the table, and I was like, "Oh." And at that point, you were already 25 weeks pregnant. You were really pregnant at that point, and I just had no idea.
That's funny because Julia let me know right after the fact. She's like, so Judith knows that you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did she react? Was she okay?
I don't. I think I just was like, oh, okay. I was and I was grateful, honestly, that you hadn't told me because I knew it was hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess things I would say we pretty much stopped talking. You had a baby. I did send a gift. I sent a good gift.
You did. And actually, you sent more than, you sent a feminist shirt gift, which was really cute. And just so you and perfect and made me smile. And then a few months later, you also sent a story, a kid's story to the boys or to the kids. And it was also with a feminist spin on it, but it was just kind of our lives in a nutshell before you moved, just about being proactive and doers, even against the grain. And it meant so much to me. I think that was
the first time I did something for you. I had thought about you. I think that was the first time in probably over a year when I was like, oh, my friend Rachel would really enjoy this. It made me think of her and it made me smile. And I think it'll make her smile too. And I think that was the first thing I did. You had done so much for me in that time and I did nothing. And so that was the first time I was able to give back. And it felt good to me. But I'll just say, we probably didn't talk for, what do you think, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months? We did not talk at all. Does that sound right?
I don't remember the timeline, but it did feel like a very long lull. And I did feel after a certain point of me giving and giving and giving, I did feel like I'm just so done with this. Not with our friendship, but I'm so done with me feeling like I'm giving my all and just it's not reciprocated whatsoever. I didn't think you wanted to talk to me because you weren't returning my calls. You weren't returning my texts.
And like, that's understandable. Of course you would think she doesn't want to talk to you if you're reaching out, you're calling, you're texting, you're emailing, you're sending food, and she's just ignoring you. Grieving people are such jerks.
I mean,
And we
Alina,
all understand why. We all get it, but like it must have been so hard.
yeah. And Alina, I was thinking when she said that, I was thinking about you because from where we sit, we always say to each other, like, I really hope my friends don't give up because I still need them
Yeah.
to keep giving, even though I know I'm being a piece of shit. It's so hard because it's like I needed so much and I could give so little, and I needed you just don't feel good. It doesn't feel good to always be on the receiving end of needing. And then slowly what happens, and I think so many people can relate to this, is that people get tired of giving because it's exhausting to give to someone who doesn't answer your calls. And so what happens is you just have fewer and fewer and fewer friends. And then you wake up 18 months later, you look around your life, and you've now lost your child. Your relationship with your spouse might look different. You've lost a lot of friends, and people don't like feel good necessarily about your friendship. And so you basically have this like teeny circle of like the people who are left. It's like you, maybe your parents, maybe, and
Maybe
then
your
like
siblings.
maybe your siblings, maybe, and then like one or two friends, and that's it. And that's it. And I started out with like this whole world of friendships and people who I loved so much and who meant so much to me, and who we did so many beautiful things together, and our friendships mattered and were dynamic and interesting and added so much to my life. And a year and a half later, I have no kid, no friends. Like it's really I feel I've done the best I can to restore some of those rust friendships, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like that's the loss is so great because naturally, even with everyone doing the best they can, everyone giving all they can, everyone doing it with the best of intentions, you still end up with nothing. Alina, do you feel the same way?
Yes, and I think the other thing that I want to just say is that you also can't possibly predict which friendships are going to be the ones that would fail, because I think it actually is kind of nonsensical. Like it doesn't actually make any sense. Like Judith,
Right.
you were able to have some relationships with people who still were parents, but like you said, you couldn't be close with your sister, you couldn't be close with
Yes.
Rachel. Like I don't think that it actually is like a formula where it's like, oh, I lost my baby, so I can't be friends with people who have babies, or like, oh,
Right.
I lost my
Because I'm
husband, so I
still
can't be friends with married people. Like it's not,
It
it doesn't make any sense. And
doesn't make any
and even if
sense.
asked directly, why can't I like be close with this person for these couple of months? Like I don't think you would have been able to answer that.
I don't. I don't. And you know what's I think really unusual is that I have a friend that lives in St. Louis that I am friends with, who has 7 children. So I mean, Rachel has 4, but this friend has 7, and I think it makes no sense. It's not, and she also was pregnant. It makes no sense at all. It is not rational, and it's not intentional. And Talia certainly did a lot less for me while I was in pain than Rachel did, who was calling Amazon. Like and yet I could be friends with Talia, even though she was inherently less of a good friend to start with and did less for me during my time of need and has 7 children. And I couldn't be friends with Rachel, even though Rachel did everything right. She loved me so much. She had only, like, she was a closer friend to begin with. It's not rational and it doesn't make any sense at all. And I would hate if Rachel walked away thinking that it was her because it has nothing to do with her. I don't understand it myself. I don't know why one pregnancy was triggering and another pregnancy was not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How does that feel to hear,
Yeah,
Rachel? Does
how
that
does
make
that
it
feel to
better
hear?
or
I feel like it's
worse?
probably making I don't know if that makes it better or
Judith, that
worse.
actually means a lot to me. That means a lot. Also because I haven't heard you say this at all.
Yeah.
So hearing it and talking this through is actually very helpful.
I'm happy to hear that because I feel like it's I feel like it feels good to me. Like it feels good to hear. All the things that you said, I'm not surprised to hear. I knew this was going on, but I think that one of the steps to repairing friendships is like having a conversation like this where we can both acknowledge that we were doing the best we can, you know, and that there was nothing no one did wrong. You didn't say anything that really hurt me. I didn't, no one said anything. You did nothing wrong. I just couldn't, and now maybe I can. I can't explain it any way better than that. The other thing I'll say, I also I want to make sure we touch on where we are now. So like Rachel, where would you say we are now in our friendship? How would you describe it?
So when you came to visit a few weeks ago, that was the best, by the way. Loved seeing you for those few hours.
Were
It
you
was
surprised that I had reached out to you?
I was shocked that you were coming in town, but I literally was jumping for joy that I would get to see you. And I was nervous too because it would have been the first time that I would see you since Aiden passed away. But you did have another baby since then.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like it was a little bit more of a safe space than it would have been had I seen you before your baby was born. So, but when you came, it felt like nothing had changed. Like you were the same old Judith. And it was so nice. It was so nice to be able to talk to you and to laugh with you. And, just the way that you care about certain things that I care about and that you just bring out, the goofiness in me. And
Were you surprised? I mean, you said that you felt like I was the same. First of all, do you feel I'm different or do you feel the same? And second of all, were you surprised that I was the same, being that I had disappeared for so long and that I didn't seem like upset at you or anything, like we were able to pick up where we left off?
that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if I knew what to expect. I don't know if I had any expectations because I just maybe I thought to myself, okay, this could go either one way or another. But it just continued. It almost felt like we were picking up where we were in the past. But the only thing was, I felt like I did have to be very careful with what I was saying. And until today, I feel like I have to be very careful because I'm just so nervous to accidentally say something that could hurt you, and I don't want to be the one to cause you more pain because you've been through enough.
Yeah.
So when you did come, I didn't know if it was good that you would see my kids. I didn't know what would be triggering for you. And until today, I don't know if I should be telling you about what the kids are up to. So I feel like I always need to wait for your almost invitation or questions and for you to ask about the kids, because if you don't ask about them, I don't want to bring them up. I don't want to talk about kids. I don't want to talk about babies unless you want to. I don't want, that aspect I need to be very careful about. And I remember I had said some sort of phrase when you came over and we were talking with my husband too, and we were all sitting around the bonfire. I remember I said some sort of, I think I said the phrase, I'm dying, just a sarcastic comment about something. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought to myself, why did I just say that? I was kicking myself for mentioning the word death because I felt like that's so insensitive of me to mention and to even just use that as a sarcastic comment next to you.
Judith,
And
did you pick up on when she said that?
Not at all. Not at all. But I do feel like that was an interesting night because I know I spoke about Aiden. And I think that's one thing that's interesting is that, Rachel, I feel like you knew Aiden because you knew me when I was pregnant with him.
Mm-hmm.
We spent time together when I was pregnant. You saw me pregnant with him.
We had a baby shower.
Rachel made me the most beautiful baby shower, and I use the blocks with my daughter that we made all the time, and I read her the story that they wrote. And so it felt like you knew him in a way that some people never got to know him. And I felt like I always wonder, like, talking about saying things, do you feel like you can talk about him, or do you feel like you can't talk about him? Do you feel like you want to talk about him? Do you not want to talk about him? Like, I know that I'm more curious about that that's what I'll more likely notice than if you say I'm dying, because I probably say I'm dying too.
Do I feel like I can talk about him with you? Yes, I think I can now because I feel like you're always very open to talking about Aiden. And I think you really like when people talk about Aiden.
Yeah.
I think that in the beginning and in the middle, I just didn't know. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about him or not. And because of that, I just didn't talk about him much. I just tried to talk about anything but kids. I just tried to redirect your mind to other places with hopes that maybe I would improve your mood that day, even though I think you just wanted to mourn. You wanted to be in that state of mourning to really comprehend what was going on. And I think that I was coming from a perspective of wanting to brighten your day
I
and
think that a
help you
lot of
take a
people
step forward.
think that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think everything you're describing makes so much sense to me. And I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I just want to say again that I'm sorry that I hurt you and that I appreciate everything that you did for me and I appreciate you trying so hard. And I appreciate your friendship and I appreciate you sending me the Airbnb gift card. I used it in Hawaii and it actually was like the most perfect gift. And I wear the necklace you gave me all the time. And the album you put together is in my living room. And um, even though I didn't say it at the time, those things really mattered. And those things made me feel loved and cared for. And you guys did it right. Even though I know you were wondering, like, are we doing what? That was all right. All those things that you did, those gifts you gave me were right. And you did a really good job supporting me. And I'm sorry that I couldn't do a better job articulating that at the time. But I know that that's something that weighed on your mind. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciated it.
Thank you so much. It's so validating and great to hear your perspective and what you were going through and just to hear that from you because it's just refreshing. It's refreshing to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
Thank
that
you so much.
I think that these episodes are gonna be really. I think people are gonna really see themselves and their relationships in these episodes because I think this is all so common and it is so painful for everyone involved. The loss has so many facets, and this is one that is painful for so many people.
Can I ask you a question, Judith?
Yeah.
Was there anything after Eden passed away? Was there anything I should have done differently thinking back? Like if knowing that you didn't want to speak with me,
Yeah.
was it a good thing that I kept persisting or should I have given you space? What?
Yeah. I think it was really good that you kept persisting because it made me know that you were thinking about me and you cared. I was never going to answer the phone. So it didn't matter what time of day you called. I was not going to answer the phone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. But I knew that you called, and that meant a lot. And I would say the only thing that I think could have been done differently, and there was no way to know this at the time, but I think there's this piece of like carrying the loss with me, remembering Aiden with me, like all the things that you do in memory of him, like share with me because those are things that I treasure and it makes me feel like I'm not grieving him alone. And knowing that other people are grieving him too feels really good. So it's not just about taking care of me, which you did so beautifully, but also helping me grieve his loss and remembering him and loving him and talking about him to your children, talking about him with your family. You know, the nursing room, having it in his name, like all those little things of just remembering him, loving him, honoring him, that also really helps too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think these are one of those things that it's impossible to know because we're 30 and this has never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
So how would anyone have known?
Right.
Yeah.
And Judith, you say all the time, like if this happened to somebody else, like we say like, oh, maybe we would be better at it, but like
I would not.
you listened to our own episode where we talked about what to say to a grieving person before you went to sit Shiva with someone else. Like
Yeah,
we
I
also
don't think I would be very
know
good at it. I don't think I would have been good at it. I really don't. I think I would have showed up like just like you and Julia were there. I think I would have done that. But I think the like ongoing calling, I think I would have done the exact same thing, Rachel. I think I would have been like, she doesn't want to talk to me, and I wouldn't have, at some point I probably would have stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been good, and then I would have stopped, because we're human, and it hurts to give and not get back, and not get any validation, and not even get a thank you, and not even get like, I received it, it means something to me. Just to like call and call and call and text and get nothing doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm. But I'm getting it now. I'm getting the validation now.
Very belated.
Very belated.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow.
Yay!